Timmy's and hockey, syrup and bacon, Molson and Mounties at your can stations, throwing on some cheese and gravy on top of our fries. That's a poutine. And we wear our plaid sweaters when we walk amongst the northern lights. Rockies and prairies, oceans and lakes, other than winter, all the seasons are great. Brushing off the snow a little longer than we'd like. But you won't hear us complaining, 'cause that just wouldn't be polite. No, man. 'Cause up here in Canada, the air's clear, the weather's adequate, we all cheer. We're pretty passionate, and everybody has a pet polar bear and a moose. Yeah, up here in Canada. Celsius kilometers, prime ministers and provinces. We maybe say it different, but we always keep our promises. We said we'd win the gold back in 2010, and we did. But because we're so nice, we'll let you win every now and again, but not too much. 'Cause up here in Canada, we like beards, we think they're fabulous. We don't fear if people laugh at us for wearing 6 pairs of long underwear. Yeah, up here in Canada. Basketball, telephones, wonder balls and hockey, snowmobiles, ketchup chips and even walkie-talkies, peanut butter, garbage bags, the mighty foghorn. Just a few things that you can thank us for. Shatner, Carey, Myers, Gosling, Reynolds and Reeves, Candy Short, Michael J and all of Schitt's Creek, Celine, Shania, Adams, Bieber, Bublé and Drake. We're sorry about Nickelback, yeah, that was a mistake. We're sorry. We're sorry. Yeah, we're sorry, eh? We're so sorry. 'Cause up here in Canada, we like beer and our cannabis, and each year we all get taxed a bunch, but everybody gets free health care. And a goose. Yeah, up here in Canada.
Good morning. We begin this morning's service with that somewhat limited and humorous take on Canada with all its warts, and we welcome you to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton on this Canada Day and 4th of July weekend. My name is Pat Dickinson, and I will be your service leader this morning. Our speaker doesn't need any introductions. Jenny Megan has been a member of our congregation for over 40 years and feels that it's her spiritual home, with 2 factors that mean a lot to her: a strong and caring community and an approach to spiritual and personal growth that gives us all enough wiggle room to grow. She's a wife, a retired elementary school teacher, a mother of 2 grown children, and a runner who's currently the president of the Burlington Runners Club. She meditates regularly in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, loves to garden, and is passionate about politics. Her religious self-definition elevator speech is that she's a Unitarian Universalist with Roman Catholic roots and Buddhist tendencies. We thank all members of the worship team this morning. Tim Vierstieg will tell our story for all ages. Music has been organized by Rachel Derry and will be presented by Rachel and Cindy Carey. And the tech team is John Elliott, Monica Bennett, and Bruce McPherson, and we have a surprise guest for you this morning as well. It's a particularly important time today that we acknowledge that we are not the first people to inhabit the land on which we meet, which is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, located on the land covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. We are grateful for those who came before us that have always been respectful stewards of this land, honoring our seventh principle of the interdependent web of all existence, preserving this place for future generations. We now seek to be equally respectful stewards for all those who follow. And we admit to having very conflicted feelings this weekend as we recognize that our Canadian history did not always honor our first principle of the inherent worth and dignity of our Indigenous peoples, and that we remain challenged by systemic racism. We pledge to use the lessons of the past and the realities of the present as constant reminders to respect all people who inhabit this land we call Canada. Our goal in this congregation is to extend our hearts and welcome to all who join us, whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are in your search for truth and meaning. We are connected through our desire to love one another and encourage each other in our spiritual growth, and in our desire to live out our ideals of peace, love, and justice for all. Our congregational mission includes our commitment to nurture one another, serve the community, and inspire action to heal the world. We'll light our chalice. We don't have Victoria to do it for us this morning. Our opening and chalice lighting words are from the Gray Hymnal, number 434. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and in miracle to the universe, to this community, and through the magic of Zoom to each other. Please join us now in reading our chalice lighting words. May this flame be our light of friendship and love. We are very conscious this morning that this is our first Sunday with our beloved Victoria, so it's a real blessing that we are able to share with you this message from our new interim minister, Reverend Jamie Boyce.
Greetings, First Unitarian Hamilton. My name is Reverend Jamie Boyce, and I am thrilled to join you in August as your interim minister. First, I am so grateful for the work of the Interim Search Committee. They were fiercely committed to hiring the right person, someone who would love and appreciate the unique gifts of Hamilton, and someone who will challenge you to be bold in your aspirations for growth, visibility, justice, while healing hearts made tender by the pandemic. Thank you, Joanne, Gail, Mary, and Dale, for your commitment, your good questions, and enthusiasm for the search process. Together, we will travel through discernment and reflect deeply on the community you are creating. We will celebrate your achievements, learn from history, experiment with change and innovation, and lean courageously into your hopes and dreams for the future while centering the work of justice in our journey. I'm excited to join you in August. Stay tuned for news from the Board of Directors and the Transitions team, who will keep you updated on my move and outline opportunities to connect in August. Until then, may gratitude for the ministry of Reverend Victoria plant seeds of hope that will blossom into the future. Let us rest in lazy days of summer, making room for daydreams, rest and renewal, and play in our lives. May it be so. Blessings, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Our time for all ages today is a Coyote Columbus story from Thomas King and illustrated by William Kent Monkman. It was Coyote who fixed up the world. She was the one who did it. She made rainbows and flowers and clouds and rivers. And she made prune juice and afternoon naps and toenail polish and television commercials. Some of these things were pretty good, and some of these things were foolish. But what she loved to do best was to play ball. She played ball all day and all night. She would throw the ball and she would hit the ball and she would run and catch the ball. But playing ball by herself was boring. So she sang a song and she danced a dance and she thought hard. And pretty soon along came some beavers. "Let's play ball," said Coyote. "We've got better things to do than play ball," say those beavers. "We have to build a dam, so we'll have a pretty pond to swim in." "That's all very nice," says Coyote, "but I want to play ball." So Coyote sang her song and she danced her dance and she thought hard, and right away along came some moose. "I'll get it right this time," says Coyote, and she sings her song and dances her dance and thinks it's so hard that her nose falls off. And right away along come some human beings. "Sure," say those human beings. "Let's play some ball. That sounds like a good idea to us." "Hooray," says Coyote, and she lets the human beings hit the ball first. Well, Coyote and those human beings became very good friends. "You sure are a good friend," says those human beings. "Yes, that's true," says Coyote. "But you know, whenever Coyote and the human beings played ball, Coyote always won. She always won because she made up the rules. The sneaky one made up the rules, and she always won because she could do that." "That's not fair," said the human beings. "Friends don't do that." So she has to play by herself. So she gets bored. When Coyote gets bored, anything can happen. Well, that silly one sings a song and she dances a dance and she thinks really hard. But she's thinking about changing those rules too and doesn't watch what she is making up out of her head. When Coyote stops all that singing and dancing and thinking and she looks around, she sees 3 ships and some people in funny looking clothes carrying flags and boxes of junk. "Oh, happy days," says Coyote. "You are just in time for the ball game." "Hello," says one of the men in silly clothes with red hair all over his head. "I am Christopher Columbus. I am sailing the ocean blue looking for India. Have you seen it?" "Forget India," says Coyote. "Let's play ball." "It must be around here somewhere," says Christopher Columbus. "I have a map." "Forget the map," says Coyote. "I'll bat first and I'll tell you the rules as we go along." But that Christopher Columbus and his friends don't want to play ball. "We've got to work to do," they says. "We got to find India. We got to find things we can sell." "Yes," says those Columbus people. "Where is that gold?" "Yes," they says. "Where is that chocolate cake?" "Yes," they says. "Where are those computer games?" "Yes," they says. "Where are those music videos?" "Boy," says Coyote, and that one scratches her head. "I must have sung that song wrong. Maybe I didn't do the right dance. Maybe I thought too hard. These people I made have no manners. They act as if they've got no relations. All they find are beavers and mooses and turtles." And when they tell that to Christopher Columbus, that one squeezes his ears and he chews his nose and he grinds his teeth. He grinds his teeth so hard he gets a headache. And then he gets cranky. And then he gets an idea. "Say," says Christopher Columbus, "I bet this is India." And he looks at the human beings. "I bet these are Indians." And he looks at his friends. "I bet we can sell these Indians." "Yes," says his friends, "that's a good idea. We could sell Indians." And they stop trying to catch those beavers and moose and turtles. "Phew," said those beavers and moose and turtles, "that was close." And they run and hide before Columbus and his friends change their mind. Wait a minute, say the human beings. That is not a good idea. That is a bad idea. That is a bad idea full of bad manners. And when Coyote hears this bad idea, she starts to laugh. Who would buy human beings, she says, and she laughs some more. She laughs so hard she has to hold her nose on her face with both her hands. But while that coyote is laughing, Christopher Columbus grabs a bunch of men and women and children and locks them up in his ships. When Coyote stops laughing and looks around, she sees that some of the human beings are missing. Hey, she says, where are those human beings? Where are my friends? I'm going to sell them in Spain, says Christopher Columbus. Somebody has to pay for this trip. Sailing over the ocean blue isn't cheap, you know. Grab some more Indians. But the rest of the human beings see Columbus coming and they jump in the pond. I'm a beaver, they says. I'm a moose, they says. I'm a turtle, they says. Says Columbus, and he scratches his nose. Where did all the Indians go? They went that way, says the beaver. Human beings and moose human beings and turtle human beings, and they point in all directions. Wait a minute, says Coyote. What about my friends you've locked up in your ships? You got to let them go. Tra-la-la-la-la, says Columbus, and that one goes back to Spain and sells the human beings to rich people like baseball players and dentists and babysitters and parents. Another couple of trips like this, Columbus tells his friends, and I'll be able to buy a big bag of licorice jelly beans and a used Mercedes. After Columbus and his friends leave, the beaver and the moose and the turtles come out of hiding, and the human beings come out of the pond. You're supposed to fix up this world, cry those beavers and moose and turtles. You're supposed to make it right, but you keep messing it up. Yes, says the human beings, you better watch out or this world is going to get bent. Everything is okay, says Coyote. I made a little mistake, but I'll take it back. I'll take Christopher Columbus back. You'll see, everything will be balanced again. So Coyote sings her song and dances her dance, and she thinks really hard. She thinks so hard her nose falls off again. And when she looks around, she sees another bunch of funny-looking people. Bonjour, says one of those funny-looking people. I'm Jacques Cartier, and I'm sailing the ocean blue. Uh-oh, says the beavers and the moose and the turtles and the human beings. Coyote's done it again, and they catch the first train to Penticton. Don't panic, says Coyote. Everything is under control. I'm looking for India, says Jacques Cartier. Have you seen it? Coyote makes a happy mouth, and that one wags her ears. Forget India, she says. Maybe you want to play ball. That's the end of our story today.
Thanks, Tim. We're challenged this morning to balance our gratitude for the benefits of living in Canada with the knowledge that these benefits have not always been equitably experienced by all, and that for some, this has resulted in tragic consequences. As I read a poem by Mi'kmaq elder Rita Joe about her time in a residential school where she lost her talk, her culture, and her identity, take time to reflect on how this reality contrasts with the freedom of expression that is granted to us in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and especially contrast it to this morning's speaker, who has the freedom to use both her thoughts and her talk to make sense of her identity as a Unitarian and as a Canadian. After I read the poem, there will be a few moments of silence, followed by a chant that Cindy Carey has created for this service, especially based on the words from the Talmud that brought her comfort during this difficult time. I Lost My Talk by Elder Rita Joe. I lost my talk, the talk you took away when I was a little girl in Shubenacadie school. You snatched it away. I speak like you. I think like you. I create like you the scrambled ballad about my word. Two ways I talk, both ways I say. Your way is more powerful. So gently, I offer my hand and ask, Let me find my talk so I can teach you about me.
I'll not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. I'll do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. I'll not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. I'll do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. I'll not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. I'll do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. I'll not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. I'll do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. I'll not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. I'll do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now.
Good morning. I want to thank, first of all, Chris Ewing for really doing a wonderful job helping me edit this, and Bill Johnston for the final edit. Welcome to our first week without our minister, Victoria. How does one follow the beautiful and meaningful service from last week? She told us to carry on with grace, compassion, self-care, commitment, persistence, hope, and more. I felt so relieved. How does one follow a service like that? Carry on, be yourself, smile, you're good enough. In a homily about being Canadian with American roots, how do I and we celebrate, recognize, or dismiss Canada Day in 2021? With the recent murder of a Muslim family and the news of a large numbers of Native children's graves being uncovered on a daily basis, I'm almost speechless. There are many isms we need to address. Today, I want to address racism towards visible minorities and Indigenous people. You see, Victoria's calm presence, her homily about the really important things in life, her wishes for us to be happy, helpful, to have hope, reminded me about why I come to church. My identity is deeply rooted in my own circumstances. The 6 of 7 children in an Irish Catholic alcoholic family, 2 alcoholic parents. There is a big, strong branch of me that's grown from the liberal politics and conservative religious beliefs I was indoctrinated with. I was born in Concord, Massachusetts, home of the Minutemen, which is the site of one of the major battles of the American Revolution. Minutemen were guerrilla fighters, farmers who took their rifles out of the bushes and shot at British soldiers marching in formation in red uniforms. I was steeped in this proud tradition of rebellion, of independence, and of the Boston Tea Party, dumping tea into the bay rather than live with taxation without representation, where the colonists wanted to rid themselves of the shackles of the monarchy. I learned nothing about the Loyalists and the price they paid until many years later in Canada. Thus was born the original difference between the two countries, the rugged individualist and the community-based collective. I drank in politics with breast milk. My mother was passionate about politics, specifically the Irish as underdogs. Being a Boston Irish is a culture unto itself, almost a parody of the Irish, I eventually learned. Actually, a real parody. There wasn't any multiculturalism beyond European backgrounds in Concord or the other places we lived in. I have a vivid memory of fleetingly driving by one Black person when I was about 5 years old. A young soldier by the side of the road, waiting for a bus, I presume. There wasn't much talk about race when I was growing up. I had no Black or brown schoolmates that I recall in elementary school. My mother told me that when she was young and dating a Portuguese fellow, my grandmother stopped it because she said they would have Black children. During World War II, when my father was stationed in the South, she was shocked to see the poverty and racism there and appalled to see that poor whites, called white trash, look down on Negroes no matter how much their financial status was. We moved to Framingham, and I was so desperate to get out of that boring suburb that in my last year of high school, 1967 to 68, I counted the days from September on. Outside events emerged that would change the US permanently. The civil rights movement had been developing for years. Martin Luther King had just been murdered. The LA riots were on TV. Like many young people at the time, I was gobsmacked, confused. And as Bob Dylan said, the times they were changing. When I arrived at UMass Boston, many profs were young, newly hired left-wingers. The university was only 6 years old itself. I learned about the racism in the underfunded Boston school system, where the chair, Louise Day Hicks, ensured that the white schools were marginally better than the Black ones, so they wouldn't complain. School integration was an intentional mess, a disaster. The city hiring policy in Boston for contractors was all about who you know, and there were no Black contractors. Oh yes, we had racism, but it wasn't violent, it was systemic. I became a women's libber, and feminism has been my political, personal passion ever since. I learned a lot about the capitalist system as well, about the military-industrial complex. The first time I went to Washington, D.C. was to protest the Vietnam War. For years, I joked around like everyone else that it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was. And it was more. Eventually, I realized that I had absorbed the mainstream message that we weren't part of a cultural revolution, that hippies were only a fringe thing, eventually only a funny, dated Halloween costume. We were more, though. It was only much later that I learned how close we all were to making real change. If JFK, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy hadn't been killed, if the Democrats hadn't gotten scared after the Democratic National Convention in 1968 and become more conservative, if Lyndon Johnson hadn't gotten bogged down in Vietnam to the neglect of his progressive domestic program, if Nixon hadn't made pot a Category 1 drug like heroin, if Reagan hadn't been able to break the unions, if the second Bush hadn't been elected, so many more ifs that could have kept the momentum going or revived it, instead of the downward spiral that hit bottom with Trump and Trumpism. By lucky chance, when I took a year off to travel in the middle of university due to a disastrous relationship fail and burnout in general, I met this handsome Canadian in Istanbul. We traveled some more, then came back to Boston. I finished university. We got married in Las Vegas and headed to Canada. It took me a little while to figure out things here. Canadians seemed embarrassed by the amateurish behavior of their politicians in the House of Commons. I realized how much better a three-party plus system is, how brilliantly it's like a family with at least 3 children. Loyalties can swing one way or the other. So many ideas are introduced by the NDP and now the Green Party that eventually have to be taken seriously by the bigger parties. Another event that pivoted Canada was Pierre Trudeau saying that the state had no place in the bedrooms of the nation. Boom, done. The US is still struggling big time with homophobia. It feels like Justin Trudeau's legalizing of cannabis is an echo of his father. Stepping back a bit and looking at Canada from an international perspective, we're a liberal-minded middle power, sometimes with more in common with the Nordic countries than with our neighbor to the south. We rub constantly against the US, where everything, plus and minus, is supersized, and changes they make have a supersized effect on us. Beyond the headlines of being this modest, funny, cool place with decent people, look at Come From Away. We often haven't lived up to our reputation or our history. The Battle of Vimy Ridge, universal health care, the discovery of insulin, Terry Fox. My own professional experience is especially Canadian. I taught in the Peel District School Board for over 30 years, and the standard of quality of education in Ontario is impressive. It's teachers' jobs to create critical thinkers, students who don't just regurgitate facts, students who can defend a point of view. In one large school I taught at, there were 30 languages spoken. Every shade of beige to black skin was represented. The GTA is the most culturally diverse metropolis in the world, and we're a model for the rest of the world. This is the future of Canada, and still, that family was murdered. Racism comes in a number of guises here. Now we're looking at the underbelly of Canada, and it isn't pretty. We've lost our moral superiority over the Americans and around the world. I talked to my son this morning in Cambodia. He heard about these graves being uncovered. Racism and colonialism are as foundational in Canada as in the US, but we've been reluctant to own it or to act on it. I really think Germany and the city of Berlin got it right. You can't go far in Berlin without seeing memorials from World War II. Germans as a whole own what they did to the Jewish people. Similarly, Canada has an opportunity to renew our commitment to be the country we strive to be, or we can continue to fake it. It feels like a George Floyd moment for us. No, we didn't create those systems, but we continue to benefit from them, and we certainly have enough resources to address them if we are committed to it. A neighbor and friend of mine disclosed this past week that she's half Indigenous. Never told me before. 15 years we've been friends. Her mother was a 19-year-old prostitute. Like many, this child went from uncaring foster home to foster home. When I asked her about the future, she said she expects no change. These things have been pushed aside forever and it won't change now. If she's right, the Canada that took me in, that has given me a great quality of life, the country I say I'm so grateful to have raised my children in, that Canada will be in the rearview mirror. Those of us living today did not create the systems of oppression, but we continue to reap benefits from them. Racism is around us and in us as well. The roots go deep. We are more comfortable with those that look like us, that live like us. But now that we know much more of the truth of Canada's past, we can't ignore it. We need to change. For those of us brought up in a white world, there will always be awkward moments. We will, with all good intentions, continue to say the wrong thing, as Lila corrected me about this week, do the wrong thing, and especially think the wrong thing. This is where we live out the growing edge. We live on the growing edge because we need to forgive ourselves for what we don't understand yet. As a church community, we can support and encourage each other as we move messily, imperfectly to do our best to live our values. If we come from a place of shame and guilt, we won't be able to really hear the voices of minorities, of Indigenous people. We can't be fragile, entitled people. Taking the risk of being wrong publicly is embarrassing. I know, I do it regularly. But I don't stop being imperfect. Self-compassion says, yep, we did it again. Welcome to the human race. Get over yourself, move on. You are still a worthwhile person. Like Victoria, I have hope for the future. My roots started in the US. My branches have grown and thrived in Canada. I am part of the forest. We have a huge collective responsibility to ourselves to respond to these murders in London and the unmarked graves all over the country as the wake-up calls they are. As Unitarians and Canadians, it's time to humbly admit and to make right what we can to the best of our ability. Canada isn't always what it's cracked up to be, but maybe after the reflective time we've had during the pandemic, we've learned a little bit about what's important. How that manifests will be different for each of us because we each have different gifts, different ways of making meaning in our lives. I'll close with this quote from Tom Fraser. So a friend of mine asked if we should celebrate Canada Day. I think I answered her, but this is just my opinion. So I'm going to qualify this by saying I am Mohawk of the Six Nations. Bow your head in sadness, not shame. You didn't write the laws that made these places. You didn't run the churches that made these decisions. Your, mine too, government did. Old dead prime ministers did. Old dead popes, priests, preachers, and nuns did. The country we live in was founded in exploitation, murder, genocide, and thievery. But every country in the world is. You didn't know about these children because the government didn't want you to know. I'm a conservative-minded person, but thank God for liberals. Now you know about them. You know about us. You are beginning to understand what we have gone and are going through. So stand up. Celebrate Canada if you want, but celebrate it because we have been found. Celebrate it because our children are being recovered. Celebrate it because you don't want this country to repeat what they have done. We have been here since Mother Earth bore the first brothers and sisters. We will be here when Grandfather Moon puts Mother Earth to sleep. We've always been here, but now you finally see us.
Number 121, We'll Build a Land. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a land
Our closing words are number 680 from our gray hymnal. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. We will now listen to our postlude. It's the Hymn to Freedom by Oscar Peterson and words with Harriet Hamilton, and it's sung and performed by a youth group called Music Monday.